What up, Craig?
Hey, Craigie. We got a big shout out to our producer, Craig, over here, putting in the hard work, tireless.
Shouts out.
He never interrupts. So thank you,
Just
Craig.
back behind the board.
And he's cheap.
Yeah.
How's it going, Chris?
I'm doing great, Tanner. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good.
Hope your 4th was good. Happy 4th of July.
That's right. Happy middle of the summer, buddy.
Oh, it's getting hot here, too.
Happy birthday, America, you know?
Oh, God bless.
God bless. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, welcome to the podcast. This is Milking the Franchise, the Cash Cow Chronicles, where me and Chris watch
movies. Yeah. Again, I think that title's too short. We need to add some stuff to the end. But yeah, on this edition, we're working our way through the Indiana Jones movies, and we kind of pick a franchise of films and watch them in order and talk about them, and kind of talk about the ways the studios use that IP to make a bunch of money. And so we've got some book content on this episode and some video games, and we're also talking about the infamous Legend of the Crystal Skull.
Absolutely. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Oh, excuse me. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Not right. Legend. I feel like an idiot.
Well, let's restart. Back from from the top.
From the top. Yeah.
Okay. Welcome to
So just rewind your podcast to the beginning and it'll sound better next time. We'll have figured it out.
Welcome to Milking the Cows, the Cash franchise.
Yep. We're the Chronicle boys, we're doing our thing.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to cover that movie. We're going to cover some other IP. And to start it off, we're going to go over last week's movie. Last week we watched The Last Crusade. And we release surveys after each episode to have people follow along, listen along, and play along. And we will read our favorite answers from the survey.
That's right. And check out our survey this week for Legend of the Crystal Skull. Play along with us.
Absolutely. All right. Let's see. We got the appetizer, as I'm calling it. We got the survey here. So last week we watched Last Crusade. We asked you guys what your favorite line from the movie was, and there was a tie between "You call this archaeology" and "Ah, Venice."
Venice.
Ah, Venice. Recurring joke.
Yeah.
Favorite scene. There's also a tie between the final finding the Holy Grail and finding the old knight in there, which I just loved. My favorite ending of all the series. And then you like the beginning, the opening young Indy scene.
I do like that scene. I think it's really
River
fun.
Phoenix.
Yeah, I think it's really fun.
Or the not the zoo train, but the
like the
what was it?
It's kind of like circus carnival train. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you like the beginning, I like the end. Perfect.
Yeah,
Everything in between was mid.
I don't even think that's true. That was a great movie last week.
Yeah, no, it was great. And then we asked you which. So we found out that the girl, who is maybe a Nazi, maybe just doing her own thing, slept with both Indiana Jones and his father, Henry Jones Sr., played by Sean Connery. And we asked you which Henry Jones would be the better lover. Also split down the middle.
Ooh.
Yeah. I mean, Indiana, he's that rough and tumble kind of guy, but the old man.
I feel like the old man's got some moves.
He's still got it going on.
He's the original James Bond. Yeah.
He's a pleaser. You know what I mean? Like, he'll probably put in the work.
Yeah.
And then there was a little in joke if you listened to the episode last time about her name was Elsa, and they told her she needed to let go and like let the artifact drop. And I made some joke about Frozen, and so we asked which was the best version of Elsa needing to let it go, and it's tied between the Indiana Jones. Nobody picked Frozen, and then John Travolta introducing Idina Menzel, the singer of Let It Go, on the Oscars.
How did he say it again?
And he called her Adele Dazeem.
Adele Dazeem. Yeah. Okay.
If you haven't seen that video, it's just a quick, funny little video of John Travolta messing up and saying the wrong name.
I feel like that would be a good stage name for the people that got that joke. You know, some young actress that has a name that she needs to change should grab that Adele Dazeem name.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do a cover of Let It Go.
Yeah.
All right. So this is where it gets interesting. We ask you to fill in little prompts and make jokes along with us. And this first question is: besides snakes or rats, what animal would be your singular weakness? Because we found out Indiana Jones' dad hates rats, and of course Indy hates snakes. So what would you hate? And our top answers here: we got otters.
Their cuteness would just melt your little heart, you know.
The way they float on their back, so cute. And then bees. That's a real thing for me. I have a irrational fear of bees my entire life.
Okay, that would be a good one. You could mix that in a lot of places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Bee Movie, of course.
Does that play like a horror movie for you, Tanner?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a mix between that and Jerry's voice.
Yeah, those two things together.
Okay, the next prompt was: who would be the worst person from any point in history besides Hitler to autograph your diary? This was because in the movie there's just a little scene at a Nazi rally, and he runs into Hitler, and he has the special diary he needs to keep, and Hitler ends up signing it, and he thinks he's going to burn the book, but he autographs it. So my top favorite answers here, we got Pol Pot or Vanilla Ice. Kind of both ends of the spectrum there.
You can take that joke one of two ways, and I went both.
Then we got Bill Cosby.
Okay, yep.
Carrot Top.
Okay.
And Roseanne. What the comedian route, I guess.
Yeah. But she went full mask off as a fascist, like Nazi a couple weeks ago. So that one fits too.
A full Nazi? I know
she
she did a special.
She said some special.
I think that was only on
Jewish people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she did.
That doesn't surprise me, I guess.
Yeah.
Carrot Top, you know, he's not really in the same. He just is a joke. You know what I mean? He's not. I don't think he did anything
both
wrong.
Vanilla Ice and Carrot Top are friends from our Bad Movie Monday, where we watch terrible movies, and they've each made a starring vehicle that we watched for that. Yeah,
it's true. We got to find a Bill Cosby or a Pol Pot movie.
Do we though? Do we got to do that?
We got it. We must.
Okay.
Pol Pot at least.
Okay.
So let's see. The next question we got: the Holy Grail in this movie was a cup of a carpenter. What cup would you select to be the Holy Grail? Example, like your favorite Superman mug or something. So we got a dirty Nalgene bottle. It's wonderful.
I'm drinking out of one of those right now.
Oh, perfect. And then my Cow with Udders coffee mug, which I think you drank out of. Did you? I thought you did.
I did use that coffee when I visited you last month. Yeah, I used that mug. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've got I'm kind of, I picked it because of the podcast. I don't even use that, but I do like that mug. And it's going to be my Holy Grail for sure.
Oh, yeah.
We asked you to rate Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade. We got somewhere in between 4 and 5, a 4.5. So, yeah. That's the survey.
Yeah. It doesn't quite match Raiders, but it was a really fun movie. Really, really good time.
Yeah, I think I rated it the same as Temple overall, just because Well, it's when I'm rating them week by week, I didn't want to give it a 5, but
Mhm.
I don't know. Maybe I should have given Temple like a 3 or a 3.5. It's hard to say, but
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll come up with an official ranking once these are all done.
Mm-hmm. We got 2. We got this one and then one more. We got the new one we're going to watch in the theaters this week.
Oh, yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. Real stoked to see that.
All right. Well, let's talk about Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
I love it.
Do you? I guess we'll find out.
We'll find out. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Chris,
there's some fun stuff in here. But yeah, we start in 1957.
Do you want to start out talking about the first time we saw this movie?
Oh, I would love to. Yeah, so Tanner and I went to college together.
And it was 2008.
2008, so that would have been our junior year if this thing came out.
Yeah.
And we went to the theater together. Share the story with us, Tanner.
Oh, well, it was a midnight showing, Yep. Thursday night, midnight showing. The first show, they used to do that all the time at midnight. Mm-hmm. Now I feel like they do those day before showings at like 7. But at the time, it was at midnight, and lots of people there, big to do. And, we were hungry, we're a bunch of like hooligans. So we wanted to bring some
the
food.
Midnight showing thing too. I don't know, the sense of excitement around this movie when it came out was incredible. People were so stoked there was a new Indiana Jones movie. So stoke was high.
A lot more so than the current one, because I think this one may have lowered people's expectations. But yeah, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And so we got in line, and we were hungry, and we decided to bring in some food to the theater.
We sure did.
We're like, hey, we'll get an entire pizza and bring it in, but they're not, they don't allow you to bring in movie or food to a movie. So what Chris here did was we took off his jacket and we took duct tape and we strapped it to his chest or his back.
It was my back, yeah.
To his back. So
duct taped a pizza to my back, and then I put my raincoat back over the top and left it unzipped, so it was kind of flowing like a cape. And so we watched this at midnight, eating a large like pepperoni and jalapeno or something pizza in the theater. We were the envy of everyone around us.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I mean, I'm surprised nobody walked in and like saw us eating an entire box of pizza, but I think at that point they're just like, good for you.
Yeah. We put in work.
I'm just impressed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember being slightly disappointed, but let's talk about it.
I'm interested to hear what it was like for you watching this again, and if it hit any different.
Yeah.
With a few years in between, but we'll get there.
Mm-hmm. All right, where do we begin?
We're in the 1950s, so we jump forward a little bit.
Oh, and they let you know right away.
Right, just Elvis on the soundtrack. Yeah, it's pretty clear. We're in a new era here.
Hey, Daddy-O.
Yeah, I like Ike is a line that gets dropped in this movie. So, so they're driving through the desert. There's an army convoy. We see some teenagers. The army convoy shows up at a military base in the middle of the desert, and there appears to be a number of American Army officers that get out, but they're told at the gate that the base is closed for weapons testing, so that these guys can't come in.
And that doesn't matter.
Yeah, you're not going to let
them all away.
We're just going to shoot all of you. Yeah. So the American officers, and I'm using American in air quotes, but you can't see that. They shoot all of the guards at the kind of entry spot to this military base, and very quickly start talking in Russian accents. These are not actual American soldiers. These are covert Russian operatives sneaking into the base. Yeah. Dun, dun, dun.
So we've moved on from the Nazis, and we got the Russians.
That's right. Yeah. We're fighting commies in this movie. Yeah. And this was the era of the Red Scare, right? So this would be like a more time appropriate villain, right?
Yeah, no, I think that was good to move on from the Nazis.
Yeah,
good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, so we go into the military base with these Russians, and they drag somebody out of the trunk of the car, and in the shadow you see him pick up a hat and put it on its head, and you know right away, Indy's back, baby.
He's back.
He's back.
The reveal, and he's with his friend. He's back with his friend Mac, a new character that they introduced that apparently he's been traveling with. And you think he's been kidnapped with at this point, right?
Mm-hmm. I like the actor they had for that. That guy did a good job, I thought. But
Ray Winstone from
Ray Winstone,
who when we watched a certain movie recently or a couple months ago, we panned his performance. What it was?
I don't remember what it was. What have we seen Ray Winstone?
He was in the Point Break remake. He was the guy. He was
Pappas. Yeah. He's Angelo Pappas in the remake.
He's Pappas. Yeah.
Yeah, the new Gary Busey. Yeah, and he was terrible in that, but he was good in this. I liked him here.
Yeah, he was. It wasn't his fault that movie sucked. That's
yes, sure. Agreed.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, and they've been dragged out into this desert to help find some sort of mummified remains, and it's pretty mysterious, and they're kind of slow playing at this point. But Indiana Jones uses.
Did you already set up that we're in the same warehouse at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Ooh, they don't reveal that until the end of this scene, but you're
really?
Right, it is. Yeah, it's during that chase scene that we see the Ark. There's a nice little Easter egg there.
I just kind of assumed as soon as I saw the warehouse, you're like, oh, we're in that warehouse.
Oh, okay, cool.
Just because they show at the end of the credits of Raiders, they show like all the boxes and it kind of zooms out, and I'm just like, oh, maybe it's because I already had seen it and I knew, but I kind of just put the two and two together.
The thing I remember catching here, there's a big 51 painted on the doors, so it's like Area 51. Yeah,
right.
So they go in. We're also introduced. Did we already talk about Cate Blanchett? She pops up here as the communist hottie, kind of the Elsa role in this movie, and she's got a real like tight black wig she's wearing in this one, and some funny little glasses. And they're looking for some mummified remains that Indiana Jones saw years prior, and they need his help to find them in this giant warehouse full of shit. Full of all the American secrets, right? The stuff the government's hiding from us. And Indiana Jones remembers that this mummified remains were incredibly magnetic, and so he uses gunpowder. He has the officers like empty out a bunch of grenades, and he's like throwing the gunpowder up in the air and watching where it flies. So there's these
following like a cloud of metal.
Like swarms. Yeah, it looks like a swarm of bugs or something flying towards this thing. Also, gunpowder's not magnetic. Like I looked that up and it isn't. But they kind of hand wave it away later when they say gold's not magnetic either. So I don't know. But whatever. They use this.
I see. So it attracts those things anyway.
Right. It's like a magic magnet. It doesn't. Yeah.
It attracts what the movie needs it to attract in the moment.
Right. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. And nothing more, nothing less.
Plot attraction.
Yeah. When they don't want it to be magnetic, it doesn't do anything. Yeah. It doesn't stick to the cars in the chase scene. It doesn't stick to people's belts or anything like that. It's just
there is some of that with like where they're like the tips of the guns or the swords are kind of getting attracted to it, you know.
Oh, that's true. And the crowbars when they pry it open.
But it's only when it's like a certain specific shot that they're trying to show. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not like the entire movie how it would be attracting their
right.
Yeah, their belts and stuff. Anyway.
So they find these mummified remains. They follow the dust cloud of gunpowder, and they dig this thing out. They cut open this mummy. And let's see. Do we see the crystal skull at this point? I don't think we do.
Not the skull, no. So they cut open this. It's oddly wrapped in a weird metal mummy wrap or something.
Right.
And then you kind of see its hands, and it's a big magnetized box that they're trying to steal. Oh, and then this is where you find out Mac is actually a double agent Or
Yeah. So
yeah.
yeah, so Indiana tries to make his move. He pulls a gun on Kate Blanchett, and all the Russians drop their guns. But then it pans out a little bit, and Mac is actually not his friend. He's been bought off by the Russians. He's doing double agent shit, and so Indiana shouts, "I like Ike." And then when he drops the gun, it shoots one of the guys in the foot, and the chase is on. He sneaks between the boxes and miraculously dodges 100,000 bullets. So many bullets.
So many bullets. Yeah,
So
he's like
many fucking bullets.
running on the rafters, and like there's a chase scene through a giant warehouse, basically breaking open all these boxes of potentially like extremely dangerous shit. I mean, we know two of the items at least are very dangerous because one of
Yeah.
them breaks open and it's a little Easter egg callback to what we talked about a minute ago from Raiders. There's the Ark of the Covenant inside the box. He
Yeah.
happens to hit that one box.
Yeah. So the implication being all these other boxes have stuff equally valuable, mysterious, and dangerous. But that's not slowing Indy down.
No.
It's kind of a fun chase scene in there. I love that scene where he's got his whip and he whips one of the like the rafters and swings, and you think he's going to get on the back of the truck, but he doesn't quite make it, and he swings backwards instead.
Oh yeah. He's like, I thought it was closer or something, and he goes
yeah.
through the window of the car.
Yeah.
And then punches the guys.
Yep.
At some point, he gets into a room with a big engine, like a jet engine turbine or something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And he's fighting like the bigger Russian guy on the like in front of that thing, and it goes off. There's a countdown, and all these guards come up behind it and just get totally melted by the rocket blast. Did I miss anything in this scene before they take off?
Not really. Yeah, that chase scene's kind of a long one, but there's a lot of stuff going on. But you're right. They end up on this like rocket cart. And so that's his way out of the warehouse. He gets out
like
there
1,000 miles an hour, just like blasts out of there into the desert on a minecart kind of thing.
Yep. The Russians show up and they grab the big Russian goon that was on the cart with him, but then they drive away. They don't really look for Indy at all, and so he's stuck out in the middle of the desert on his own. It's night. Go ahead.
It just kind of travels all night, right? Did I miss anything there?
Yeah, it seems like he's like hiking, trying to get out of this desert overnight, and then in the morning we catch back up with him. Like looking down this valley, and he spots a little town. So he hikes down to the town, and it's very 1950s, like very what's that movie? The perfect little white fences.
Pleasantville, or
thank you. That's exactly the one I was going for. Yes, Pleasantville. Yeah. It's very Pleasantville. Like colorful clothes hanging on clotheslines, white fences, perfect green grass, the ice cream man, like that sort of a little town. He breaks
like a little
into
oasis in the desert of like 50s oasis.
Yeah. He breaks into a house and checks the water, but the water doesn't work. And he goes up to try and find somebody living in this house to call for help. And what's going on with the people, Tanner?
Well, they have turned magically plastic, I think.
No, do you think is this movie in the Barbie franchise? Are these Barbies?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. This town spoiler alert. This town's about to get blown the F up with a nuclear bomb. It was a little to me like the upcoming Barbie versus Oppenheimer thing, right? Like these
Barbie versus Oppenheimer.
Well, isn't that the joke on the internet?
They're opening on the same weekend, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my god, that is funny.
Yeah.
That is exactly what this is. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's this scene, man.
That's really funny. Yeah, so everyone's plastic, and he kind of realizes very quickly that this is like a test site for a nuke, and these are just fake people that they put in there. I don't even know, to make it feel alive. And I did read that this is like they did this at least one time. They did some kind of test town like this with fake people.
Just to see what the nuke would do to a town. Yeah.
Yeah. So he hears the countdown, and it's like already happening in 10 seconds till the explosion. And there's some Russians that had chased after him to this town, right? And they take off, and he tries to get a ride with them, which I thought was a funny little touch.
Yeah.
Like he's like mad that they left him behind.
I would be too, man. There's a nuke coming.
I know. It's like, forget that you're trying to kill me.
Yeah.
Let's both escape the nuke together.
Hmm.
But it turns out they're the ones who are going to die, not him, because he is saved by a lead-lined fridge.
Oh yeah, the most infamous scene in this entire movie comes like 10 minutes in, and Indy pulls all the shit out of a fridge. We get a close up with a little thing that says lead lined, and he shuts the door behind him just as the nuke is about to drop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when the bomb goes off, then the fridge goes flying miles. I don't know how far. I mean, miles and miles, and rolls around and lands in the desert, way outside of the blast zone.
Mhm.
The door opens, and he's fine.
He's totally fine.
Totally fine. And the Russians were driving away in the car, and they get completely dissolved. The town's completely dissolved. And this brings us the term for nuking the fridge, which is just kind of the same thing as jumping the shark. It's like when a movie kind of goes a little bit too far.
Ridiculous.
And
so
it's kind
implausible.
Yeah. It's kind of the
What are
basis
your
for
thoughts on this scene?
podcast.
Yeah, exactly. This podcast kind of grew out of this kind of thinking. What are your thoughts on this scene rewatching it? Knowing it was coming, knowing all the reception of the years since. What were your thoughts on this?
I didn't hate it as much. Yeah. I didn't think it was it was kind of fun. I don't know. What did you think?
Yeah, I kind of thought the same thing. I thought this got a little overblown, and having just watched the other movies, there's a bunch of implausible hand-waving nonsense that happens in the other movies too. I actually don't think this scene was, I don't know, it's dumb. It's like for sure deserves some hate, but I don't know. It didn't bug me that much this time.
I think there's another scene in the movie that is that really ruins the movie, or that's like almost. I'm going to come up with a new term for it when we talk about it.
Okay, we'll get there.
I think that scene is probably worse. Yeah, I mean, it's totally implausible, but at the same time, George Lucas said that he did a bunch of research on this, and that the chance of surviving that inside of a fridge is 50-50.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know where
How
he's
did
doing
you do
his research
on that.
The internet.
Okay, the internet.
He Googled, can you survive a nuclear... No, I don't know. There must have been some kind of thing.
Here's how he got 50-50. He Googled it. It says you're going to die. And then he put it into Bing. And Bing was like, you're going to be fine, man. 50-50, baby. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why he only uses Bing from that day forward. It tells him what he wants to hear.
Yeah. But I did actually like parts of it does some scene setting for the 1950s and for like the nuclear paranoia and like that stuff. Sure. I think it actually it fits in the time frame they're trying to do. But it's stupid.
It is such a huge jump, and it's like to come across it. It's like the timing thing where it's like you just come across it right at that moment. You know, you just wander into this test site and there's no gates or anything. There's a lot of little things like that. It's such a huge jump to be like, oh, I'm running away from all these spies. Area 51, that's all cool. And then, there's a nuclear test site right here.
Yeah.
It seemed it's also pretty close to Area 51.
Very close to Area 51, walking.
Because he only wandered for he could have walked. It seemed like he walked all night. So it could have been 8 hours walking or something. But yeah.
I wonder too if the fridge hadn't flown through the air and had just stayed in place and everything had kind of melted around it, if people would have hated it quite as much.
That's what I was gonna say. Although the nuclear radiation poisoning would have killed him the second he got out.
Without a doubt, but that I think could be hand waved away a little easier than him flying a mile and a half away and landing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because that would just rock your fucking skull and body. I mean, you'd be crushed, or the
I
door would
fly
rock open.
Your socks off.
Oh, it rocked my socks off for sure.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah.
My socks are way off.
They got rocked off, baby.
But the door not flying open was another big issue for me.
Yeah. Well, there is. There is those old fridges got outlawed because kids would get locked inside.
Oh,
the doors latched in a way you couldn't open them from the inside. So
Really?
like,
Okay.
but then the door does open when it needs. Yeah, I don't know. It's
When it needs to.
whatever.
Yeah.
I think we're going way too deep into this, but
No, I mean I think it deserves some conversation for
sure.
it's a pinnacle moment in cinema history. Much
I mean, it's
like
got a phrase, nuke in the fridge, right?
yeah, much like the opening scene of Raiders. This also made its mark on Hollywood forever. Not in a great way though.
Not in a great way. Yeah.
But yeah, that's the scene. I thought it was more entertaining this time around. I could just relax and enjoy it for its ridiculousness.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
There
think
we
that's
go.
that. Yeah.
Anyway, Indy survives his trip in the fridge, and he gets scooped up by the FBI. And one of those guys is the janitor from Scrubs, and he is not happy. He thinks Indiana Jones was working with the communists to help steal the mummy, and he's like accusing him of a bunch of stuff, and they're threatening to lock him up and all sorts of things. But at the end of the day, they kind of reveal a little bit. We get a little bit of like background on the Cate Blanchett character. I did not write her name down. Did you catch her name?
I got it right here.
Okay, I literally just wrote Kate in all of the references to her in my notes.
And she's amazing in anything she does. She's a little underplayed here.
But, yeah, they didn't give her much to do.
Irina Spalko. I was gonna say, just in that opening scene, they kept like showing these little like prairie dogs everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
What was that? Is that just trying to be cutesy and like, I don't know. They kept showing like prairie dogs reacting to like the fridge getting thrown. Like, I don't know. It just seemed really silly to me.
Yeah, anyway, I don't know.
I just kind of steamrolled that. Yeah, Irina Spalko.
Shakespeare always had a Greek chorus, right? The people narrating. Maybe that's supposed to be. We're supposed to see it through their eyes. I don't know. I did notice that as well.
Yeah, seeing it through the prairie dog's eyes. Got it.
Yeah.
Anyways, Irina Spalko.
That's all I've got for the FBI scene. Did you have anything you wanted to talk about there, or can we go to the university?
No, they dropped the phrase paranormal military applications, which I like. The Russians are trying to find. There's like exposition and stuff. Russians are trying to find this to maybe use alien technology, and they need to stop them from getting it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nope, that's all I got.
But they think Indy knows more than he does know. Apparently, when he did the excavation on this mummy, like he was blind, like nobody really knew what all was going on. He only saw part of it. And so then we cut back to the university where he works, and everyone is in love with him. And Indy has been put on administrative leave, and the dean has had to quit his position over the controversy of,
he had to fight to get Indy paid and had to resign because of that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's the government trying to like hide what's going on and hide, isn't that what it's supposed to be?
That
like,
pressuring them. It's Red Scare stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
So they're being a communist and working with the Russians, and at the height of the Red Scare, like that's a black mark that the university can't stand by, so they have to put him on leave, and they fire his boss.
And there's a couple scenes here of like showing their students. His students are very nosy and like interested in everything he does, right? Like where they're like kind of clamoring and like the entire class is trying to listen in on their conversation. And I just find it interesting that they moved away from like Indy. It's just like the girls in love with him. It's like everybody wants to hear every piece of Indy that they can. He's so cool.
He's so cool.
So smart.
Yeah. Was that how your relationship was with our professors at Western?
Yeah, Dwayne Shipley. Dwayne Shipley, the most boring man in America. My linguistics teacher.
There you go. Yeah.
Yes.
We also get a little shot at the university. Marcus has died, who was kind of the university Marcus connect Brody. in the first three movies. Marcus Brody.
Also, his dad has died.
And his dad. Yep. So, R.I.P. Sean Connery.
Yep.
Yeah. And so throughout this, Indy's like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. I think I'll head to Europe. Maybe I'll teach there while this controversy blows over, and then maybe I'll be able to come back. So he heads to the train station. And who do we meet in the train, Tanner?
What was that last bit?
I just said Indy heads to the train station to kind of take off to Europe for his next career move, and through the smoke at the train station, who pops up?
Oh, it's Mr. Mutt.
It's Mutt, baby.
Mutt Williams, played by Shia LaBeouf.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that must be another dog joke?
I was gonna bring that up.
It's gotta be. We talked about this last time, but a lot of the main characters, especially in Temple of Doom, are just named after dogs of the people who made the movie. Indiana and Willie and Short Round are all dog names, and Mutt, it's just gotta be, man, right?
It's gotta be some kind of shout out to that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like the child of two dogs is a mutt, or I don't know, something like that.
Something, yeah.
Yeah. I want to know if there's other dog people like Ox. I could see Professor Oxley being a dog name.
Without a
Mac.
doubt. Yeah.
Mac.
Yeah.
That's definitely a dog.
Yeah.
Arena Spalco. I'd name my dog that.
Classic dog name. Come here, Arena Spalco.
Spalco.
Over here. I got your feet.
So he we got Shia LaBeouf shows up. How do you pronounce his name? LaBeouf? LaBeouf.
No, it's Shia. You're saying
Shia. Okay.
Shia.
Shia.
Mm-hmm.
He shows up on a motorcycle on the
train platform.
And
he is
cruising along.
So cool. Have you ever seen anybody look so cool?
He is greasing it up. He's one of the coolest people I've ever seen.
Leather jacket, hat off to the side, combing his hair. He's got a switchblade. Coolest guy around.
Combing his hair. He is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
So he's driving this thing on the platform as the train's leaving, and just like identifies Harrison Ford or Indy. I don't know. And just calls him off and tells him that something about Ox, right? Oxford or Oxley.
Dr. Oxley.
Yeah. Dr. Oxley found something and he needs him to get off the train.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I found it really weird that he's just driving along the platform.
Oh yeah.
It was an odd choice of a way for him to be introduced here.
And it seems like they make him obsessed with motorcycles in later scenes, but it seems like it's just for this one in the chase scene that they needed him to be a motorcycle guy.
Yeah, they make the point of showing that he brings it along on a plane later, and he like hides it in the bushes by the graveyard later.
Yeah,
and, but he never uses it again.
But they never. He didn't need to bring the motorcycle to South America anyway.
At all, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so so they meet up at a soda shop, or a malt shop. Is that what those things were called?
Sure.
Sure, soda malt.
Soda malt.
And we get a little bit of exposition on this other archaeology professor named Dr. Oxley, who they refer to as Ox throughout the rest of the movie. And apparently Ox knew about some real crystal skull, and he was looking for a place called Akator, which is the lost city of El Dorado, like the city made of gold that was rumored to be in South America and the Amazon.
Mm-hmm. It's like early technology that didn't exist, that like no one else had until, like, it was supposed to have better technology than anyone after that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and honestly, including El Dorado as like a story point in an Indiana Jones movie, I'm surprised it took 4 movies to get there. It's like such a legendary treasure hunter.
It's great.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. And then Mutt also has some letter that was sent to him by Dr. Oxley, or maybe his mother. His mother is also missing. We get that piece of information here.
Yeah,
and
Mary Williams, as he calls her. And he's like, he apparently she knows Indy, and he's like, there were a lot of Marys, kid.
Yeah, like that was my mom. Yeah, but his mom is missing.
Indy reveals that. Yeah, Indy reveals that he almost died of typhus looking for this skull himself at some point. Yeah. So it's been on his radar.
Oh yeah. And then Mutt also has a letter that was written by Dr. Oxley in this strange language that we can see it, but we can't really read it. And as soon as he pulls out the letter, Indy notices 2 guys at the bar, or the Do malt shops have bars at the? There must be a bar.
The countertop.
Just because they don't serve liquor. Yeah, at the bar top. And so they pop over. They try and rough them up and steal the letter. You're coming with us. Bring the letter, kind of a thing. They're KGB agents, so the commies have followed Indy and Mutt to this malt shop, and they try to apprehend them.
And to get out of it, they start a wacky 50s greaser versus jock fight here.
I think
they called somebody
Socias,
Joe College.
Right? Joe, yeah. Weren't the greasers, or it was greasers and Socias? Wasn't that what it was?
Socias.
Wasn't that
what
not,
does that mean?
I think it's the phrase for, I don't know. It was in the book The Outsiders. It was the greasers and Socias, but I don't know.
Yeah,
we weren't alive. Who the hell knows, man?
Who knows? Yeah. So they're constantly reminding us that we're in the 50s here. It was very just like the music, the 50s music starts, and there's kind of a big cartoonish brawl going on. But it helps them escape, and they get out, and now there's the motorcycle chase.
Yeah.
They're cruising around. At one point, Indy crawls inside of the car and is punching people. Then he crawls back onto the bike. And then they go into the college where there's all the Red Scare signs and anti-communist signs, and they're having a protest in the middle at the school. And they crash into they make the Russians. Is it the Russians? Yeah, crash into a big statue and the head of Marcus Brody. It's a statue of Marcus Brody, and it lands in their lap. So another little Easter egg there.
Yep.
And then they bike through the school a little bit, and I think it kind of ends there. The chase kind of ends in the school, right? Yeah,
there's a good line in there. They kind of crash the motorcycle, and one of the kids recognizes Indiana and asks him some archaeology question, and he responds, "If you want to be a good archaeologist, you got to get out of the library." And then they get back on the motorcycle and take off. Yeah, so that was the chase scene. The chase scene's a lot longer, but watch it.
Did I miss anything there?
It's a fun car chase. And then we go to Indy's house, and they kind of start picking through this letter that he had sent to Mutt, and he figures out that it's some dead Mayan language that it's written in, and he interprets it and is able to connect it to some sort of geoglyphs, these big rock formations you can only see from kind of like crop circles, right? It's kind of my understanding of those things.
Yeah, they're like animal shapes that you can only see from the sky.
Yeah. And Indy has an atlas, and they kind of figure out that he must be sending them to Peru, so they need to go to Peru.
The Nazca? I think Nazca, Peru is what it is.
Okay.
Yep. So they hop on the plane with the bike, and they get to Peru, and they kind of walk around town. You find out that Indy rode with Pancho Villa, and Mutt found that incredible.
Mm-hmm.
You see Ray, at one point you see Mac hiding out or just hanging out in the streets, so you know he's around, and they're also in the same area. But I don't know if he was aware of Indy, was he?
I thought he must have been there to follow him, right?
It must have been, yeah.
That was my understanding.
Or they're both just onto the same track or whatever.
I thought they must have followed him there. That was how I understood that scene. But you might be right. Either way, the Russian, or at least Mac, is there in Peru. And they find out that Dr. Oxley was locked up at the insane asylum in this town, and so they go to see the return, his room. I don't know what you call it.
His cell.
His cell. Thank you. And there's just scratchings of a madman written all over the walls. Doodles, words, stuff.
Yeah. There's all these words in different languages. It's one word that means return.
Mm-hmm.
And then so they're kind of something about returning the skull to who or to where. Something called Orlana's cradle or something like that, which is translated to Orlana's grave. And that was, I think, the guy who found the skull.
In Espanol, 2 L's is pronounced with a Y sound, so I think it's Oriana.
Oriana. Mm-hmm. The crystal Scooey? Is that
Exactly. Yeah, we've been saying it
okay.
wrong this whole time. We're missing George Lucas's like his
That's
original
part of the
interpretation
puzzle.
here.
That's part of the
Yeah,
puzzle. Yeah.
the crystal
Um,
squee.
so Oriana is the guy who found the crystal skull like hundreds of years ago, right? And moved it.
Yeah,
I'm pretty
yeah. He
sure.
was. I think he's like an actual historical figure. He was like a Spanish explorer, grave
Yeah, yeah.
robber. You know. And
Yeah,
yeah,
so
he was
Ox
searching
had found
for the
this
city of gold.
grave. Yeah.
Yep.
Ox had found the grave and left him clues on how to find it again.
Yep. And there was a map that he drew on the floor.
Yeah.
I think was the thing that pointed us to the grave. So we're off to the grave.
Dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun. Yeah, so we get
It's
to the
a
grave.
very spooky little graveyard, very tiny graveyard.
Yeah.
On this hillside right by one of the geoglyphs, and it is like a spooky place.
Yeah.
Of course, they
And
go there
are
on like the
some weird
spookiest
little
night of the
protectors.
year.
Yeah, it must be Halloween. It's got to be Halloween.
Exactly.
It's certainly spooky season.
And then they got spooky Peruvians guarding the place as well.
Yeah. Yeah, they really turned that up to 11. These guys are wearing skulls for masks, and they've got blow darts, and they're just like monkeying around.
Yeah, spidering and monkeying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Blowing poison darts at them.
Mm-hmm.
And there is one great little scene where he's about to blow a poison dart at Mutt, and Indy pops up out of nowhere and blows it back into his throat.
I did like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then we get a little classic Indiana Jones intrigue, like pushing on rocks and finding secret passages through this gravesite. And we find Oriana and his men. There were 7 of them, and they're all in this temple, kind of tied up. They cut open the wrappings on one of the dudes, and he looks perfectly preserved, like he died yesterday, is what Mutt says. And as soon as they expose him to the air, you watch him. Kind of like the end of Last Crusade, where he like ages 100 years.
Once the air hits it, it decays like rapidly in front of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's on the way to this scene, there's a big. Well, Mutt gets bitten by a huge scorpion, and there's a ton of scorpions. So every movie has like a different critter or bug. There's snakes, there's rats, there's cockroaches or bugs, and now there's scorpions in this one, where it's like the floor is kind of like littered with the bug. It's like a reoccurring thing. Curious what's going to be in the next one.
Might be your bees.
Bees. I hope it's bees. I could use a good scare.
Yeah.
And he's like, they keep
showing
Mutt.
I hope it's bees that are animated like in Bee Movie.
Yes. So it's very cartoony, like
very cartoony,
Roger Rabbit style in the middle of it.
By Jerry Seinfeld. Yeah, that's the
scary
thing of the new
If
one.
they're really traveling through multiverses and time in the next one, then maybe it goes into some cartoon world. You never know.
Maybe, who knows?
They show Mutt like nervously. He's combing his hair in the middle of the dungeon and stuff like that. And Indy's doing all these, impressive things. And he says, "You're a teacher." And he says part-time.
Part-time, yeah.
And Indy also tells him that big scorpions are okay. The smaller ones, you better say something if you get bit by a smaller scorpion. I don't know how true all that is. But
I know it's true for rattlesnakes, but maybe scorpions work the same way.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And yeah, they find that mummy, as you said. They find that somebody else had already been there as well. So it had been opened already.
Mm-hmm.
And they discover, after they see the guy's skull wilt away, that somebody had brought the crystal skull back, right?
Right. Yeah.
So they find the skull and they realize that somebody had been there and brought it back already. There was footsteps of somebody coming and going twice, the same person, because it's similar footsteps or like similar sized feet. So at some point somebody came in and took it, and then somebody came back and put it back.
Yep.
Yeah. So do they take the skull from here?
They take the skull. So they take it, and and they're a little confused because no one has taken the gold that was in the tomb, and who brought it back? Like that was what was written on the wall in the cell was returned, and it seems like it's already been returned. But when they walk out, they're immediately surrounded by Mac and all the Russians, and so they get captured and kind of brought to the Amazon, to this little like Russian base camp in the Amazon.
All right, so this is, rewatching this movie, I didn't have as big a problem with the fridge and some of the plot points and stuff like that. And the fact that there's like aliens in it, which at first I remember thinking it was like too much. And I don't have any problem with that anymore, but I do think the special effects are a little odd. And like, I feel like the Crystal Skull looks just like cheap and fake. Did you feel that way?
Yeah.
Like the skull itself, I don't know, the other idols and other things, they look better than this one. And for some reason, it just looks like a really cheap piece of plastic. I don't know. It kind of takes me out of it. Every time I would see it, I'm like, oh God, that's just like, it just looks bad. And some of the like, I guess I'll talk about this at the end, but the saturation in a lot of the action scenes is like weirdly, like it feels like you're on set or something. Like the lighting is so fake looking. I don't know how to describe it. Anyways, mainly what I was trying to bring up is how fake that skull looked.
No, that's a great point. And one thing I wanted to talk to you about is like, these movies use a lot of like the supernatural stuff, but I don't think that's what I like about these movies. I just like the globetrotting adventure stuff. And
totally,
so like, I wonder, like,
I love like the little, like just a little bit of it. It's like, you don't believe it. And then at the end, they hit you with the little supernatural,
Yeah. And it's usually in the other movies, I think the ones that worked really well, there was something that was like connected to some story from the Bible or some like ancient mythological rumor. And so I feel like if they were just looking for the city of gold, I feel like that would have been a good enough hook in this movie. Well, like, I don't think they needed the crystal
there's
skull
a lot
stuff.
of, I remember when I was in Peru, a lot of people believe that like Machu Picchu was built by aliens. Like it's not like, because they're like, there's no way that anyone could get all these stones up here, blah, blah, blah. And, a lot of them, my tour guide was like really trying to push that part of the narrative. And I think a lot of people actually believe that some of those ancient structures, the pyramids and stuff like that, are built by aliens. So I think that's what they were going for, that it's like, oh, this is
that's
all these ancient cities that they talk about.
That's
all these,
Okay. Yeah.
And it's almost like I was thinking about it as like a godly thing as well. It's like, well, we did Christian stuff. We did like this Hindi or Buddhist, what was it? The Hindi stuff in Temple of Doom or something.
Yeah.
And it's kind of using those religions. And this is like a different sort of like religious-y, like outside of Earth thing where aliens could be seen as like gods to these people when they came down. So I actually found it kind of interesting in that sense. It's more of a,
okay. They did connect it to Area 51 too, which I did like.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
So,
no, I think that's a fair point.
Yeah. Anyways, where are we here? They got they came out of the tomb and they got
scooped up by Russians and they got taken to that base in the Amazon.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, this is when they're kind of showing. She has Cate Blanchett has Indy tied up here, and she basically reveals an entire alien body behind a screen. I guess he sees it, and she's like, "Why don't you believe what your eyes are seeing?" kind of thing. And basically, it says that the Akator place, the City of Gold, was built by aliens, and that's like how they got that technology. Basically, what I was just kind of trying to explain.
Sure. Yeah.
And then, how does he get out of this one?
Well, he kind of makes it clear he's not going to help them, and so they're like, "Well, all right. Well, then we need to find, him and Mutt are like, no, you're gonna have to kill me. I'm not helping the communists." And then they kind of bring out their ace in the hole, the person that they've been hiding. And who is it, Tanner?
What's his name? Oxley? Professor Oxley?
Yeah, that wasn't even what I was going for. They also have Marion. which is Mutt's mom.
Yes.
And obviously Marion Ravenwood, the love interest from Raiders of the Lost Ark. So a nice character to bring back. I think we both loved her performance in the first one and her character.
And it's because of this movie that I was like, for some reason, I thought she was in more of the movies.
Yeah.
And looking back, I was like, oh, she's only in the first one. And then when they brought her back for this one, I'm kind of like, oh, she must have had more appearances in other movies, but she didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's also they showed this kind of like crazy looking white guy, just like saying a bunch of nonsense, and that's Oxley, right? His buddy.
Yeah, John Hurt, and he's just speaking in gibberish. He's the crazy guy that was at the insane asylum, and he's acting like a crazy guy that should be in an insane asylum.
Was he just kind of Mutt's? It wasn't like his like stepdad or anything. It was just like a figure in his life, like
some sort of father-y figure. Yeah, I think so. And Indy kind of stares. Did we talk about his Crystal Skull? Is Crystal Skull like talking to him?
No,
because they do that briefly. And so the Crystal Skull tells him it needs to be returned or whatever. It kind of communicates with it. The Crystal Skull
has done something to Oxley as well, where he can't say anything but like clues and like things about the Crystal Skull and where to return it and all that.
There's kind of a lot going on in the scene. Also, Indy punches Mac in the face a couple times, and then at one point, Mutt decides this is his chance to make a move, and he starts a fire and punches some people in the face, and they run away into the jungle without a plan. Indy had kind of decided he was going to help them find this lost city because they didn't really have any options because they're in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. And Mutt's like, no, we're going. Let's go.
And they take off and get immediately stuck in like not quicksand, but a dry sand pit.
Yeah.
So there's like at first you think it's quicksand, and I wrote down quicksand, and then immediately they kind of go into a lengthy, kind of jokey thing where Indy's explaining why it's actually a dry sand pit, not quicksand, because quicksand is filled with water and mud and blah blah blah. Anyway, so they're sinking in this, and Mutt.
Another thing I was surprised it took till movie 4 for them to use was quicksand. It's not first
quicksand.
3. And it's a classic adventure trope. Yeah,
there's so many things that they probably could still do. I guess we'll see what happens in the next one. But just ripe for. There's plenty of things ripe for more of these movies, right? I mean, there's so many legends, so many hidden artifacts out there, historical artifacts that they could use, and like. And
I think we've seen that. I mean, with the Young Indiana Jones show, we talked about last week, with the book that I read this week, with all the other stuff. There's a million ways you could go with this, and so they end up stuck in quicksand. The big reveal in the quicksand is that not only is Mutt Marion's daughter, but it's also Indy's son. So in their time together, Indy didn't know about it, but this kid, with his switchblade cycle, is actually the son of Indiana Jones. He's Henry III.
Henry Jones III.
Some little family jokes through this.
There's a couple things earlier where Mutt was talking about not finishing school, and he's like, oh yeah, he didn't really say much about it. Or he might have said like, that's fine, whatever, you'll find something you love. And then as soon as he finds out that it's his son, he turns to Marion and says, well, why the hell didn't you make him finish school? Turns like immediately into dad mode.
Dad move.
Classic dad.
Yep.
And then Mutt comes over to get them out of. Him and Marion are stuck in the quicksand. The Russians are kind of looking for them, and Mutt's plan is he goes and he finds the biggest snake I've ever seen, and uses that as a rope to try to get Indy and Marion out. But of course, Indy hates snakes, and he won't grab onto it to save his life, and he's sinking deeper and deeper, and he asks them to like, say it's a rope. Say grab onto the rope. And then this scene felt a little forced to me.
I think it reminded me, last week you didn't like that scene with kind of the comic relief in the castle, and this reminded me of that a little bit. It's like they play up the humor of the situation instead of the dire stakes.
Yeah, which I don't mind in theory, but it's like I think Indy would grab onto the snake to get out of dying. You know what I mean?
I also think that Mutt could have found like a branch. Like
anything
they did
else.
This
it was totally
just
silly.
Snakes. Yeah, it's totally silly. But the snake thing works. They get him out of the quicksand, and they'd also sent Ox to get. Indy said, "Get help," and so Ox goes to get help, but the help is the Russians, so they're immediately recaptured.
And right when he shows up, there's a good little moment. Right when the Russians show up, and then Ox kind of just sits there and says, "Help," and that's kind of how the scene ends. I thought it was a funny little ending to it. Yep. There was a little part there that I thought was interesting or just like silly as well. Ox, played by John Hurt, by the way, they're asking him to figure out where the stuff is. This is right before they go into the quicksand, and he's starts auto writing. So he's just moving his hand around, and they put a pencil in his hand and put paper up to him, and they're auto writing.
Why did
auto writing ideographs? I don't know.
Yeah,
they're just oh, of course he's auto writing. That's what he's doing with his hand. Like everyone does, auto writing.
That normal thing. Yeah.
Anyway, so the next scene we get immediately, they're cruising through the forest, and another silly thing is this. There's this giant deforestation truck at the front of it, and it's cruising. It's got to be going 50 miles an hour through a dense Amazon forest, just mowing down trees as it goes and clearing a path, and they're all going full speed behind it and
clearing such a path that the other trucks can drive at 50 miles an hour.
It's not there's leftover logs and stumps on the ground that they're gonna stop and they're gonna crash into or break their car over. It's clearing a perfect path
yep
through the forest. Yeah, that was
and we'll get there in a minute, but we're almost to the point where this movie. I'll save it when we get to the monkeys. Yeah. That's where this movie goes off. There's they have some nice. The three of them are kind of locked up in the back of this truck, and they have some nice family moments. I like the little line. There must have been plenty of other women. There were a few, but they all had the same problem. They weren't you, honey. Nice little moment between Indy and Marion. Mac throughout this chase scene, they beat up the guard. They managed to kick him out of the truck and kind of they use Mutt's switchblade to cut themselves free, and they commandeer one of the trucks. So there's a chase scene going through the jungle. Mutt finds a sword in the back, and there's a weird sword fight with him and Cate Blanchett.
It's like a rapier or what do you call that? A fencing kind of fighting scene. Each standing on top of a car as they're driving side by side. And a bunch of times they'll use the swords to kind of grab the crystal skull and move it back and forth to their truck, and then back to the other truck, and then back to their truck. Also during this little fight scene, this chase scene through the jungle, Indy grabs Mac, his old friend, and Mac's like, Indy, I am on your side. I'm a double agent. Remember what we were? And I tried to spell it out for you or something. Remember wherever it was, Berlin. And we were double agents. And so now you find out that he actually is a good guy.
Yeah.
And he's been playing he's been playing both sides. So Indy is now he's back on this. Mac is back on the squad again.
Yep, exactly.
There's a great line here as well where Cate Blanchett is fighting Mutt with a sword, and she says, "You fight like a young man, eager to begin, quick to finish."
Yeah, I like that.
Definitely
line too.
A little sex joke there.
Yeah.
But then on top of this car, here comes the big moment. Here he gets clotheslined.
Mutt. Yeah.
Mutt gets clotheslined by a vine, basically.
Yeah.
And he hangs onto it and lifts him up into the trees. And the rest of them take off, and Indy's chasing after Cate Blanchett in cars, and they just leave Mutt behind.
Yeah.
But it's okay. And why is it okay? Mutt's going to catch up to him.
I'm going to pause this here for a second because I thought about this a lot last night, and this is the point. 1 hour and 22 minutes into the movie where I think this movie loses sight of the goal. Like,
this is where this movie, as they say, nukes the fridge.
Nukes the fridge. I think up until this point, this movie is it's a just fine. It's maybe even a good Indiana Jones movie. Would you go there with me?
Sure.
Like, even with the nuking the fridge thing, I think this movie is as good as you expect an Indiana Jones movie made in 2008 to be. I think the jokes are funny. The action scenes are fun. The intrigue and the globetrotting stuff is great. They're in a new country. They're doing all sorts of good stuff. Yeah. And then from here on out, I have a lot of issues with some of the decisions that they made in the movie, starting with the monkeys. Because so Mutt's up in the trees, and in order to catch up to trucks going 50 miles an hour,
he looks a monkey dead in the face. And then,
and they just start Tarzan swinging. So, like, the hanging vines, one to the next.
And so he's like, oh, these monkeys are swinging through the vines. I could do that.
Yeah.
I have no experience doing that, but I could Tarzan swing
also,
through the
how
forest.
Is that faster than just going back down to the ground and running? I don't understand this scene. It's bizarre.
You clearly don't understand monkey physics.
That's my problem. Yeah. So there's a chase going through the jungle.
Oh, and it looks so cheesy too. Like this whole scene with the special effects, honestly, like the cars driving through the forest, it looks very cheesy and bad CGI, or like just not the great practical effect chase scenes that we're used to in an Indiana Jones movie.
I think that's it. Yeah, and in the last one, I mean, there was that big fight in the desert with the tank and everything, and that was all practical effects, and it felt scary. It felt like Indy might die. And
here's the problem with all
the
problem with these current, like, Marvel movies or anything like that with action scenes and stuff like that. That's why Fury Road was so awesome, and certain movies like that, where they use practical effects for the most part with CGI to fill in the blanks. There's like so many lawsuits, and like they're worried about safety and stuff like that, so much to the point where they don't want to do any practical stunts anymore, and so everything is just CGI'd.
Also, Harrison Ford is like 65 in this movie.
Yeah, but Spielberg said that he didn't notice any physical difference between when he filmed Last Crusade and this movie with Harrison Ford. That's what he stated. He's also his friend, so he's just being nice. But this scene with all the fucking with the fencing, you can have a stunt double. Trucks. Oh, sure. You can have stunt doubles do it. Mm-hmm. But it's just like a liability for studios to even film anything practical anymore. So you get these fake looking scenes. It's like, why even do it then? Because it just looks so cheesy.
They're playing up the silliness. There's no stakes to this. There's no threat that any of the main characters are even in trouble because they're fencing on the backs of trucks. It's like, it's silly and over the top, and I think it takes away from some of the excitement and the adventure feel.
There's one little trivia point that I read that kind of sums up how ridiculous the use of CGI is, in that they, because the safety standards had changed, they wanted to CGI Indy's whip in this movie, and Harrison Ford, like, to not even have a whip on him ever. And Harrison Ford just thought that was so ridiculous and wouldn't do the movie unless he was able to actually hold a physical whip in his hand.
Wow.
And I just think that's so crazy, because it's like, you're going to have to CGI the whip when you, like, use it to swing on something, sure. But as far as holding it, even, it was going to be totally CGI.
Yeah, that's a little ridiculous.
Anyway, I thought that was insane. Anyway, speaks to the just cheesiness of the scene, and like the swinging through the forest scene looks just so crazy. And I kind of like blacked out during the scene. I went to a fugue state. So I'm wondering, did he like swing out of the forest onto the moving car? Is that what happened? Man,
I wish I'd been in your fugue state with you, Tanner. So it
was nice for a second.
The main characters, Indy, Marion, now Mac's a good guy, and Ox are all in one truck. and Cate Blanchett almost pushes them over the edge of this cliff. They've kind of popped out on this big cliff. But out of the jungle, here comes Mutt swinging on like Tarzan of the jungle, like swinging on these rope vines, and he kind of saves the day. So they're able to kind of pull ahead, and then there's a big. They kind of jump off a smaller cliff, and the cars crash, and then we get another scene which I think is just incredibly stupid with all the ants. The ants was one of my big problems with this movie.
Yeah, I wrote that down. I have a question for the survey about what was like the most over the top, ridiculous part between the fridge, the monkey, the ants, just having aliens in general. Yeah, but there are parts of this scene that I do like.
Okay.
So then there's a million ants that come up through the car, and they're swarming
like the size
so
of
much.
Cockroaches. They're huge, like red fire leafcutter ants, and so you see pretty quick they just engulf one of the Russian soldiers just gets devoured by these ants.
Yeah, it's like a swarm. It completely covers him like a sea of ants and just eats him alive, basically.
Yeah.
At one point, they pull one of the guys into the anthill hole, and I like this shot of him it's his head poking out of that, and the ants are covering it and just eating him alive. I thought that was very much kind of the end of Raiders, this kind of grotesque moment.
Sure.
I don't know. I liked part of that, but also you find out that the skull is anti-ant, so you can move the skull around, and the ant swarm doesn't come near the skull. So you can
Ox
travel
uses
through
to open an opening so Indy can fight one of the big Russian dudes.
Yeah.
And then that's the dude that gets dragged off into the anthill when Indy inevitably defeats him.
Yeah, and then he gets sucked into the anthill and eaten, and Indy comes up with his hat is right by the anthill as well.
Yeah, it almost gets dragged into the anthill, and then the ants move aside at the very last moment.
Yeah, he uses the skull to get his hat back.
I did like that shot. Yeah,
uses the ant repelling skull to get his hat back. Luckily.
Yep. Are we done with the ants? I would love it if we could move on. That part drove me crazy.
I think so. They just they get away. I don't know. Cate Blanchett gets away, and they drive off. I can't remember what happens next.
Yeah, so the commies come up with a big truck, and they drop some ropes over the side of this cliff, and so they have to climb down the cliff, and so Marion shows up with another car, but it's like a boat car.
Yeah.
Right, and so she has a different plan. And so all of our protagonists are in this car, file into the car. There's a bunch of bullets here that, again, they shoot like stormtroopers. Nothing gets hit. And so instead of doing what the Russians are doing and climbing down this cliff, Marion has a different plan. And her plan is to just drive off the cliff. And they land in a tree. And the tree bends to just delicately drop them in the river down below.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another very cartoonish moment.
Yep.
Right into the tree, and now they're in the water, going down a river, and John Hurt Oxley is saying 3 times it drops. Yeah.
And immediately as a viewer, you know exactly what he means. It's waterfalls, right? We've got some waterfalls coming up. So 3 times it drops. They take this boat car over the first waterfall, they land, they take it over the second fall, they land, and then the third one, the boat kind of dumps them out into the water. But those 4 scenes together, the monkeys, the ants, the boat using the tree to get into the river and the waterfall, all back to back. It was just it was too much, man. It was just too much.
Whole, I'd call it one long sequence or whatever, right? That whole sequence scene is I got a lot of problems with it.
Me too.
Also, just little things he doesn't lose his hat when he falls into the waterfall every time. It stays on his head. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I guess I could look past.
He's got to have his hat though. That's his thing.
He's got to have his hat, but he could have lost it and grabbed it, or I don't know, held on to it with his hand. Anyway, so they get out, and there's something about eyes of tears. and they look up, and the waterfall looks like a face, sort of, and there's like some caves with water coming out of it, so it looks like a crying face, right?
Right.
And then they have to get back up there and go through the cave.
Yeah.
And so it's Mac and the other three of them, Marion,
Four of
Mutt,
them.
and Indy. Yeah.
And Ox with the crystal skull.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Marion.
Ox too. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then there's also critically here. There's a little tracker beacon on the ground. And so you think like, oh, maybe that was on the boat, but either way, definitely the Russians know where they're at and they know where they need to get to. So they go through. They go into this cave, and we get a bunch of like Incan guardians, like Peruvian...
more like sneaky little. Yeah. Well, one of them's like hiding behind a face, and you see his eye come out, kind of like those like the man behind the painting in a haunted house kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's tribes, and they're the like what Incan you said?
Oh, I don't know. I'm just guessing because they're.
No, I think you're
right.
right.
In Peru,
Yeah.
Some
Some Incan tribes are fighting them, and they chase after them out of the cave, and they wrap them up. But
those guys must have been waiting in their little hiding spots for a long time.
Oh yeah, they don't eat. They just
does
wait.
Somebody bring them food, or do they get out to poop? Or I don't understand the physics.
Well,
of
I
that,
wrote
but
this
there's
down.
a bunch of them. Yeah,
I wrote this down right here about Indy and the gang. Like, what are they eating this entire time? Ants.
Great point. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, they get chased out of there. They're coming up like there's a big, what would you call it in the center? Like is it a pyramid? Like a Mayan style pyramid. Yeah.
Yep.
Like the square style pyramid with like the levels and everything.
Yep.
And so they run down the stairs, getting chased. They get caught up, and Indy's like, "How did you get out of this one, Ox?" And he just points the skull at him, and they're all scared of the skull. So now they're able to get away because the skull also repels Incans. Apparently,
Incans and ants.
So it repels Incans and ants, but it attracts any other type of precious metal type thing.
And communists.
And communists.
Yeah, and communists. Yeah, exactly.
And archaeologists.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So they run to the top of the pyramid.
Yeah.
I think we can go through this part a little quicker. And Ox has figured out the way through this next step, and so they like knock out some of these little like head carvings on at the top of the pyramid, and sand drains out. And when enough sand has drained, this big rock drops, this big obelisk forms, and the floor beneath them kind of melts away. And so they fall down, run down these stairs, and kind of find their way into this big cavern at the bottom that has just a ton of like precious artifacts from human history. There's Egyptian stuff, there is like Ming Dynasty stuff, there is Hindu stuff, there's like all sorts of stuff from all over the world.
And you find out that Indiana is like, oh, they're collectors, and he just kind of like smiles and is like, they were archaeologists. So like the aliens are archaeologists.
Yeah,
apparently.
Yeah.
Is there? Yeah, I thought that was funny.
Yeah. Would love to see a movie about the aliens just rounding up some of these precious artifacts from all over the world. Make me that movie, George Lucas.
Yeah, just like Indiana Jones, but it's an alien Indiana Jones.
Yeah, they've got like a space whip or something. Yeah.
Sounds good.
So they kind of like wander around here, and we kind of see again, Mac is dropping these little beacons for the Russians to follow. So he's shifty, man.
And Indy says, "What are you, a triple agent?"
Yeah.
He said, "No, I was always just working.
I was just
for
lying
them,
about
basically.
being a double agent."
Yeah. And he uses.
Mac is also super greedy. He's like grabbing all these golden medallions and these like precious necklaces and stuff. And he's like, he's gone full greedmeister. He's just grabbing things.
Yeah.
And Indy and Marion and Mutt and Ox see this one door at the back of this cavern, and they hold the crystal skull up to it, and it like opens for them, and they walk into this final cavern. And around this cavern, there are I think there's 13 of the alien skeletons made out of this crystal material. that they'd kind of mentioned that earlier. And so there's 13 of these things, and they one of them is missing its skull, which is the skull that they've got with them.
Yeah. So they go up to it. They're kind of talking about how it's a hive mind or something. I think Ox is like back to normal all of a sudden, right?
It's either here or right after, but yeah.
Yeah, and they bring it up to the one empty alien body.
And before we say they bring it up, the Russians have caught them at this point.
Yeah.
They storm in and they've got their guns, and Cate Blanchett takes the crystal skull, and she's the one who returns the crystal skull to the missing alien, and it kind of magnets itself exactly where it should be. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of makes eye contact with her. And she's just like, I want to know everything. I want to know it all. She's basically wants to know whatever knowledge that they have for her. And that's kind of what they discover, is that this City of Gold, it may not be revealed till a little bit after this, but the City of Gold translates, gold is the same thing as treasure, and treasure is knowledge. And they find out that
there was
no City of Gold, it's just a city of knowledge.
They even used the phrase, the real treasure was knowledge.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
In the friends we made along the way.
Exactly. It's a little bit of a letdown, honestly, if you're going for the City of Gold and it was just knowledge all along. Like, okay, that's fine. But
it's like, it's better. All time. It's like time knowledge. It's like knowledge of everything that's ever happened throughout the universe, I feel like, is kind of what they're going for.
Yeah.
And like, so what happens is things start to kind of crumble, and she's looking into the alien's eyes, and everyone's trying to escape because shit's going down here. And everything's crumbling around her, but she's like, wants to know everything. She sticks around, and all this knowledge basically is like going into her eyes and her brain at such a clip that she can't handle it, and her eyes like burst into flames.
Her little human brain can't handle all that knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, did you ever see that Failed Pilot with Jack Black, Hitman and Jack, or something like that?
I have not seen that. No.
There's like
it's a deep pull, Tanner.
It's on YouTube, and it kind of like blew up as like a viral thing. Like when we were in college, I remember. It was like a really funny show that never happened. And I don't know, it's like this scene where he's like, I see, or I know everything. And he's just like getting hit with like all the knowledge into his head, and his like head explodes. And it reminded me of that. Where she's just like, yeah, I don't know what they're going for exactly, but they mentioned that there's like a portal to another dimension that opened above them right here. Right?
Yep. And the rest of the Russians get sucked into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's kind of above.
She's getting all the knowledge, and then she kind of dissolves and just like burns up into nothing.
Yeah. There's also this scene, and this was the CGI that I didn't like, when all the aliens, like the crystal skull skeletons, kind of combine back together into one alien.
Oh, yeah.
And I did not like that CGI. I thought that was not great.
Yeah.
But pretty anyway, so Cate Blanchett has had her head exploded. The Russians got sucked up into the ceiling, and the other main characters escape back into that room full of gold and stuff. And they have to find a way out because the whole place is kind of crumbling and falling around them. But Mac has, he's overcome by greed, and he's unwilling to leave all these treasures behind. So he kind of gets sucked into the portal. And the rest of the characters run up, and there's like another kind of like in Temple of Doom, like a mysterious source of water that spouts up out of nowhere that like pushes them up this well, and then they find this ridge line, and they watch as the rest of the everything there kind of gets ripped to pieces. As the
entire temple just like swirls around, and there's like just rocks and stuff swirling and almost hitting them. They're standing right by, just like it's like right by a tornado with all this like giant just rocks and debris flying everywhere, and he's standing right out in the open. It's kind of another silly moment, I feel like. and it like kind of crashes right next to him, but he doesn't move. He's watching this thing go down, and then a spaceship comes out.
Ooh, it was the
So
aliens all
it's
along.
A UFO starts rising out of all this debris and kind of disappears. And they say it takes off. It didn't fly away. He's like, where did it go? To space? Into the space between the spaces is what
I did not
says.
like that line either. Yeah, I thought that was too silly.
So I don't know why they didn't just have him go to space, but apparently they went into another dimension rather than just off to space. I don't know why they even brought dimensions into it. You know, they could have just done off to another planet and then, you know, left you with the wonder of where they're from, you know?
Sure. Yeah, that would have worked.
But instead they just disappear into like another dimension. And I think that's it.
That's mostly it. There's the real treasure was knowledge, and then
the
we
friends
get kind
we
of
made
a
along the
wrap-up
way,
scene.
of course.
We get a wrap-up scene at the end where Indy gets his job back, and now he's like assistant dean, or he got a promotion. It seems like at his university.
Wasn't that Mutt, or was that him?
Oh, I thought it was him.
Oh,
Was it
you're
Mutt?
right. It was because it said junior, and I'm like, oh, Mutt now works there. But you're right. It was him.
Yeah. And then there's a scene of Marion and Indy getting married. And I remember when I watched this movie the first time, I didn't like that. It felt like when James Bond got married, like Indiana Jones is a playboy, he should be out there doing it. But I actually think with like watching it again, it's Marion.
Yeah.
Like that's fine. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, and he's too old to be like, you know, out there gallivanting, and sleeping with a bunch of women. Like, no, you know, nobody finds him sexy in that way anymore.
Sure. Speak for yourself, Tanner.
I mean, some people might, but.
Yeah. And then there's a scene at the end where the door blows open and the gust of wind blows Indy's hat off a coat rack and it lands right next to Mutt, and he reaches down to pick it up. And at the last minute, Indiana Jones grabs the hat away and puts it on and walks out of the chapel. And so it's like sort of, it almost sets up Mutt as the new Indiana Jones, but obviously that did not happen. We do not have a Shia LaBeouf Indiana Jones film. So, you know, for better or for worse, however you feel about Mutt and his character in this movie.
Yeah, it was definitely trying to set that up. I did read that. I don't know when it changed. Maybe it was partially the reception of this movie, but also Shia LaBeouf made some negative comments like right after the movie came out about how he like failed the movie and like, couldn't sell. He mentioned the monkey swinging scene and
do you think
like fractured
I have a lot
his
of
relationship with Steven Spielberg because he made these comments publicly like right after the movie came out.
Okay.
And like they were like, hey, there's a time to like promote the movie, and then there's a time to like say your opinion. And
right, you need to wait 10 years, homie,
or a little while, yeah. Anyway, and
would
like,
his movie
Harrison Ford called him a fucking idiot.
Would his movie have been called Mutt Jones?
Mutt Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Yeah.
Oh, can you imagine? And then I imagine a lot of it is him swinging on vines. Like that's a big plot point in all.
Mutt Williams.
Mutt Williams, yeah. And the monkey swing of destiny.
Oh, yeah.
That's the movie.
That's the movie.
That's the movie.
So we're gonna talk about what we think of it. Save your negative comments for the next part of it here, Chris.
Okay.
But overall, just generally, what did you think?
Overall, it was better than I remembered. Especially the first 3/4 of the movie, I thought was a pretty fun Indiana adventure. And if you're able to watch it without all of the noise because you know, like everybody hated this movie when it came out, and I think it was really easy to pile on. But like watching it and giving it a chance again, I think, you know, it had some fun stuff in it, and it used a lot of like the world traveling stuff that I like. You know, the kind of the Incan like theme of doing the thing in Peru, and you know, just having Indiana back and the theme music and all that stuff is really fun. So I think there was some fun stuff in this movie. Yeah. What did you think?
Yeah, I thought it was better than I remembered for sure. I was surprised to see the Rotten Tomatoes score was like 77%, and which I was kind of shocked by. I didn't realize that was like well received, even though the audiences kind of hated it.
Mhm.
And that's probably like a lot of like 3 out of 5s. It's not like they're all like 5 out of 5 reviews, but yeah. So it was better than I thought. There's a lot of entertaining stuff in it. It really just lacked kind of the punch, I guess, and the
Mhm.
stakes. But overall, it wasn't like badly made, except for that one like 20-minute set piece that we had to endure.
Yeah.
But besides that, it wasn't poorly made or anything.
Oh no, I mean it's Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. It's a great,
Yeah,
from a film
and there's things
perspective.
I
It's
like. I
great.
liked
Yeah.
I liked the aliens. I liked most of the ending. I liked the first half of the movie, like you said, it was pretty good. Yeah,
I think, yeah, I don't love the end of the movie. I
you
wasn't
didn't like
crazy
it.
about it, but like it falls in line with the other movies. There's
I
this
guess
big mysterious supernatural thing that kind of happens at the end that leaves you, it's supposed to leave you with like a sense of wonder, and it did
yeah.
that really well in the other three movies, and this one for me it missed the mark a little bit, but it,
I
it's
liked
it's Indiana Jones, like that's what you need to expect.
what I like about the endings is that the whatever they're searching for actually goes off and like kills somebody, and like you see the true power of whatever they were searching for,
Exactly.
and it actually
Yeah.
happens, and like you bear witness to whatever it is. And I love that they always end it like that. And I thought there was the cool moment of her like absorbing all the knowledge, and then her eyes catching on fire was cool in that moment.
Yeah.
The actual aliens itself, some of the special effects were kind of cheesy. Again, the crystal aliens looked really dull and bad. But overall, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Chris, I want to ask you something.
What do you got, Tanner?
Where's the beef?
Where's that beef? So sizzly. Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. The beef for me is that sequence. It's the swinging on branches, it's the giant ants, it's the falling down waterfalls, riding a boat onto a tree. That stuff it's too much over the top nonsense in too short of a period of time. And it just doesn't feel like there's any stakes. It doesn't feel like the characters have any chance of dying. They need to get from point A to point B, and they did it in the most silly, over the top way possible. And it's too much for me. That sequence especially is bad. And then I also didn't care for the CGI on the alien at the end, when the aliens were recombining. I think those were my big problems with this one.
Yeah, the monkey swinging killed it. I could even say the fridge, even though I enjoyed it more the second time around.
Mm-hmm.
It still is a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
The special effects, just the lack of practical effects. For a movie like this, I get it in like superhero movies and stuff where they're flying around and there's aliens and they're in space and stuff like that. But if it takes place on the ground in a real world, I feel like they should use practical effects. I mean, Again, I bring up Mad Max Fury Road, which was just amazing at what they could do in 2013 or whatever, which things have been CGI for 10, 15 years at that point, and they went all mostly practical. And it really pays off. I don't know. I think it's just so much better in every way, practical effects. With CGI to like kind of like give it a little bit of lift here and there, but yeah. Anyway, I think that's the main beef.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's talk about. So I've got to come up with cow related puns for every segment, and this next segment here, I'm calling nutrition facts.
Ooh, this is a new one.
It's the same thing, but I just came up with a title for it.
I love it.
That wasn't planned.
No notes,
yes.
Tanner.
Okay, good.
Perfect. Yeah.
Well, what do you eat? You eat food, so
yeah. No, I'm into it. Yeah.
Okay, so this is just basically talking about some IMDb facts that I read, and then box office. So, yeah, this movie was made for obviously the biggest budget, and because of CGI and all that, and just all the liability, I think, in action movies cost so fucking much to make now. This movie cost $185 million to make.
Can you give me do you know what the old ones were? Can you give me a touch point?
Yeah, it was like 20, 28, and 48.
Okay, wow. Okay, so way more.
Way more, and this is pretty standard of the time. It's not like, it's not like totally crazy for this time period or anything. But I will say the new one costs about $300 million. And I think a lot of that was because they had to keep, I don't know, with COVID, they like had to shut down and restart and whatever else, other issues like that, and it just costs more in general. But so yeah, it's 185 milli. Opening weekend was 100 million, so it was a big opening weekend. Lots of people went and saw it. Made 300 million in the US and then 790 million worldwide. So it was a financial success.
Big success, yeah.
The general rule of thumb is you double the budget for advertising costs. I don't know if that relates to that big of a budget, but so basically you got to make more than double of your whatever the estimated budget is. Actually make a profit.
Well, it sounds like they hit it.
But they did it. They made a ton of money. We'll see what happens with the next one. But I think it warrants a sequel, right? I mean, I think a lot of people were upset about it, and that's probably why they waited so long. But again, I think you can plug them into anything and make another movie. You can keep making Indiana Jones movies forever, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And this one, I mean, for all its faults, I think it took big swings. It took a lot of big chances. Like they could have easily just picked something out, like the Shroud of Turin and done another Bible movie with Nazis as the bad guys. And this one, like it tried some new things, and, you got to appreciate that on some level.
They tried to like up it to like the 10th millionth degree or whatever. Like it just, let's do aliens now. Like that's about as far out there as you can go.
Yeah. And I didn't know the connections between Machu Picchu and like kind of that alien conspiracy history. No, I think that ties it together a little bit better for me.
Yeah. I actually like that angle when you think about it like that, because I think that's why they chose Peru and all that, is because maybe not because of Machu Picchu, but there is a lot of those things with all the ancient stuff. Even the pyramids of Giza, those some people think those were built by aliens too. So it's an interesting aspect to like come true in an Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. What other nutrition facts do I got for you here? Indy Harrison Ford didn't want to dye his hair because he just wanted to promote natural aging or something like that, which I thought was kind of interesting. I talked about the whip they wanted it to be CGI, but he thought that was ridiculous. Let's see. This might be a dud of a segment here. Sean Connery, we're just going through random facts. Sean Connery,
the nutrition. I'm building up my nutrition here. Yep.
Yeah, it's a healthy snack.
Mm-hmm.
Sean Connery was asked to come back, but he was having too much fun in retirement and didn't want to come out. So he was alive. They just killed him off. He didn't want to do it.
Okay.
I talked about Shia's comments. A lot of these I kind of peppered in anyway. I think the last thing I'll mention is just that leading up for the next movie, and as far as like sequels for this and where the franchise is going, Disney bought Lucasfilm in 2012, so 4 years after this came out. There hadn't really been a Star Wars movie or an indie movie in a while, and Lucasfilm sold out, and that all changed once they sold to Disney. So we'll see what Disney does with the franchise next week.
Okay. I guess I didn't realize. I thought that purchase was just Star Wars. So that's interesting to me that they got Indiana Jones too.
Lucasfilm in general, yeah.
Okay.
So technically, they do own the rights to UHF.
I will eagerly await the theme park that they're going to build for UHF. Yeah.
No, but so what else did they got? Willow was one thing that they got. What other Lucasfilm movies are there? There's like I want to say like the not Fraggle Rock, but like the Labyrinth stuff. I think that's Lucasfilm.
Okay.
Maybe I could be wrong about that. But I'm pretty sure that's right. What is that show called? Not Fraggle Rock, but not Labyrinth, but it's the other one that's like that. Do you know what I'm talking about with the puppets? Pretty sure that was.
Oh, the Crystal Skull or the Crystal. Isn't
yes,
it Crystal in the name?
That's the one that I'm thinking of. The Crystal.
It's not Crystal Skull because that's the movie we just watched. But yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Dark Crystal. That's what it is.
Thank you. There we go.
So they got franchises like that as well that they've rebooted, and Willow was one recently that it was just a one-off movie from the 80s. Have you seen it?
The Willow?
Willow, yeah.
I don't think I have seen that one.
It's starring Warwick Davis. He's the little person. He was in Star Wars, but he is like a magical dwarf knight or whatever, and it's kind of like a fantasy epic with him and Val Kilmer, and it became like a big cult success. It was just the one movie, but people loved it. And then earlier this year or last year, they came out with a TV show called Willow, with Warwick Davis in it as an old man, but like new people kind of taking over. Like it's really bad, is what I'm getting at. It's like completely tarnished. It's so much so that Disney Plus has already removed the entire series from their platform.
Wow!
Like they just spent millions. I don't know how many. I mean, probably $100 million on this like 8-episode series, and it's not even streaming on there anymore because it was so bad.
Wow. Okay.
And I feel like it just like tarnished. Like the movie's still on there. I rewatched Willow last year when that came out, and we're like, "Oh, let's watch the show." And one episode was all I can make it through.
Okay.
So that gives me low hopes for this next movie. It's basically
the reviews have sounded pretty positive, and so
I think it'll be fine.
I'm eagerly optimistic. I just want more indie, Yeah.
Sure, and I like the director of the next one, James Mangold. I think Spielberg was actually supposed to direct this, but he dropped out due to creative differences. So that could be. I think that's a Disney issue as well. So I am a little bit nervous in some ways for it, but I think it's in decent hands at least. So yeah, we'll see next week.
Great.
And let's round out what am I trying to say? Round off. Let's finish this episode.
Let's do it.
Talking about a little bit of IP milking. What do you say?
Let's do it, baby.
That was the milk. We're into the milk portion, and we're going to talk about some other Indiana Jones IP. Do you want to start us off?
Yeah, man. Yeah, so in addition to these movies and the TV show we watched last week and the games Tanner's going to talk about, they've made a bunch of Indiana Jones books. And so I've kind of decided I want to read a couple of these books for the last couple of weeks of our Indiana Jones stuff. And so I read just one of their, I thought it was going to be more of a kid's book, but it's not that much of a kid's book. I read a book called Unicorn's Legacy by an author named Rob McGregor. In this book,
and it's about that type of girl who will have a threesome with you, right?
Is that what a unicorn is in this context? Yeah. No, and it's about literally a unicorn horn. And I thought it was going to be more unicorn stuff, but the way that they present the unicorn horn, it's like if you have it, you become very powerful and the things that you want come true. But it's kind of like a monkey's paw thing, and eventually it leads to your downfall. Right. And so
that's cool.
Indiana Jones is searching for it. It ends up in the like American Southwest, and he has to like use some sort of like they use like the am I saying that right? Anasazi, like the tribe down there. There's some like
Aziz Ansari,
and that's it. You nailed it. And like they have to find this unicorn horn. There's a love interest. The book reads kind of like a mix between like, have you ever read like a Louis L'Amour book, like those classic Western novels?
I think I did a long time ago. Yeah.
There's a lot of like Southwest cowboy, like eat bad guy with a gun and a face scar kind of stuff in it. And then there's part of it that takes place in Rome. And that part there, I mean, there's a little bit of like Robert Langdon Da Vinci Code stuff in there too. It's like
Cool.
pretty easy to read, but it's not like a kid's book. It's like there's a lot of love interest stuff, and they really play up how horny Indiana's students are for him. Like they spend several pages talking about like how it's mostly girls that take his class, and the other professors think he's like having sex with all of them. It's kind of weird, honestly, that part.
Well, they alluded to some of that early on, and when he's younger, good for him.
Yeah. Well, and guess how old they set his age at in this book? That was the other thing that I wanted to bring up.
Oh, I don't know.
How old? How
60.
old would you say he is in like the classic movies? How old is he?
Oh, mid-40s.
Okay, they set him as 28 in this book.
28.
28, and I was.
And
like,
when does this one take place? Do you know?
That is
like,
not Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones is at least in his mid-30s.
When did this book supposedly take place?
Oh,
do you know? Was it supposed to be before or after the events of the movies?
Time. There's like they mentioned Mussolini, so I guess that would be maybe it's before. I'm not really sure, but the time this one is very much
before World War II.
Yeah. So anyway, that was my book. It was a fun read. I got through the whole thing in a weekend. It goes by real quick. I was hoping there was going to be more unicorn horn stuff because they don't actually find the artifact until.
Maybe it's supposed to be like a unicorn horny. Unicorn horn is how horny everyone is for him.
Nailed it. Absolutely nailed it.
How many pages are we talking here?
Oh man, it was probably like a 200 page.
Nice.
Yeah, and there was a love interest who ended up being bad, and she gets killed. And spoiler alert. Sorry if you're about to read Indiana Jones and the Unicorn's Legacy. I'm sorry if I ruined that for you, but Mara turns out to be bad.
No.
And the part of it, yeah, I don't know. I didn't love how they resolved the unicorn horn at the end, but you're gonna have to read the book and find out for yourself. So anyway, glad I read it. It was a fun read. Really momentum.
Tell us,
momentum.
please.
Okay, fine. The bad guy who was buying the unicorn horn was this politician, and when he found out it makes you into like it's kind of monkey's paw, and it ruins you at the end. It leads you down a path of ruin.
Like the ring.
He just gives the unicorn horn back to Indiana Jones, and so he didn't have to like steal it back or do any cool stuff at the end to get it back. Yeah. So
it doesn't like make him wilt away and his face melts off or anything.
They didn't have that. No.
Damn.
So anyway, yeah. So that was Unicorn's Legacy, and I think I ordered this week. We'll see if it comes in time. But I ordered they have a few choose your own adventure Indiana Jones books, so I'm hoping to read one of those this week, and I'll be able to talk about that next week.
Cool. Yeah, I was gonna bring up what we should do for next week's version of this, and I was thinking we could do either a book or more games or whatever. But I was also thinking we could do like rip-off movies and watch like The Librarian or National Treasure or something like that.
Okay.
And have a little similar segment, but like a different aspect to it. We'll talk about it later.
Cool.
So stay tuned for that, everybody. Anything else you wanted to talk about with that?
No, that was my book. I'd love to hear about you played some video games for us this week, yeah?
I have played a lot of Indiana Jones video games, and most of them are terrible. Well, we played. I was kind of streaming for you a few of them like a couple weeks ago. And I'm just going to start with all the ones I played in order and give a quick, just kind of review. And I don't know the story of any of these necessarily because I didn't get far enough, and it's just kind of like you go to the city.
Also, from watching you, some of them are borderline unplayable in 2023.
Oh, they're all of them. Yeah, or most of them are. Yes. So the first one the first game came out in 1982, along with or right after Raiders of the Lost Ark. And that was Raiders of the Lost Ark for Atari 2600. This was that one that we played. It's completely unplayable at this point in time. I don't even know how to describe it. It's just, if you've seen Atari graphics, It's that, just some guy, could be indie, could be anything, and you go down a screen and you fall into a pit and there's a snake chasing you, and it's just, you can't get out of it. From what I could see, there's no way to even get out of the pit. I don't know. I didn't put more than like 15 minutes into it probably. I'm sure I could look up some guides on how to do it. I'm sure there's a way to beat it, but I did not do that. There were some other games in the 80s, like point and click adventures. I think there was a Temple of Doom game somewhere that's like also for the Atari. That's basically the same thing. But then I played a 1992 NES game, Nintendo game, Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. This is one you also saw. It's kind of a basic side-scroller, Ninja Gaiden style game. It doesn't feel like Indiana Jones really at all. It's completely forgettable. It's playable, I guess, but it's got that thing where you just kind of walk up and enemies jump out of nowhere and attack you. Yeah, it sucked as well.
Yeah.
The same year though, one of the best Indiana Jones games that ever came out was the Indiana Jones and the Fate of the Atlantis. And this is the point and click game, kind of like the old Sam and Max games, which are all LucasArts games, I believe, as well. So LucasArts really had a monopoly on these really good point and click story adventures.
I think the Indiana Jones setup works really well for that too. You know, you kind of move around and find clues and go from scene to scene. Yeah, it fits really easily. Yeah,
an animated scene, you walk around, you have options like open, close, give, talk. Like you have to click. It's kind of an annoying thing where you have to click like talk and then you click on the item, or give, then you click on the item, instead of like, I don't know. It looks like they made a remastered version and a lot of those little annoying aspects of it were fixed. So you can just like click on a person you want to talk to. It'll give you options of what you can do, instead of like, I'm going to try throwing this at somebody, and then it says you can't do that. But the humor is really good in this. It's got like a full-fledged story, funny little scenes, good voice acting and stuff. For 1992, it's pretty impressive. But they weren't trying to do anything actiony, so they were able to just get away with a good story and tell a decent story. I played it for maybe an hour only, but I was enjoying it, and I might finish it.
I've said it before. Atlantis is a perfect setting for an Indiana Jones movie. It's fucking perfect. They need to make that movie. Yeah,
they should just make the movie based on the game, or take aspects from it at least.
Yeah.
So then I played a Super Nintendo game from 1994, Indiana Jones's Greatest Adventures. This one was also one that you saw me play. It's a very typical Super Nintendo side-scrolling game where random enemies are jumping out, but this one is everything is explicitly from all the indie movies. So you start off in the temple with like the bats and the spiders kind of attacking you, and then you have to run away from a boulder, and it basically uses all three of the original movies and goes city to city and takes elements from it as just like a kind of a side-scrolling action game. I really didn't enjoy it though, because it's just one of those things where you can't win. Things jump out at you, and you have like 3 lives and 3 continues, and you have to start from the beginning if you lose. It's very difficult.
I remember watching that one. Yeah.
Yeah. And you lose your whip all the time. If you get hit, you like lose your whip, and then you have to find it. Like you don't even have it all the time.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
Oh, I think you would have to be really good. It's set up like an arcade game that's just meant to eat quarters. Yeah. And it just, it seemed like you'd have to be really good at hitting the buttons at the perfect time to get through it. And it seemed like kind of a drag.
I like games like that, like a Ninja Gaiden or a, I don't know, Castlevania or something, where you're just kind of side-scrolling and killing guys, or Contra, but it just didn't do very well. I will give it props for like having everything very explicitly from the movies, and representing indie pretty well with that. All right, now let's get into what I played this week. So I took a jump in time in consoles, and I went to 1999. And these two games that I'm about to talk about, I'm kind of still playing, and I think I'm going to play all the way through because I am actually enjoying it. And this one came out for PC, I guess, first, but then Nintendo 64 as well. It's called Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine. So in this one, you're kind of in the American Southwest. And there's communists. This one made the communist jump here. I'm trying to find my notes. But it's very basic Nintendo 64 kind of gameplay. The camera's a little shitty. But you got your whip and a lighter, and you got snakes and stuff like that. You got guns. And the snakes bite you, and they infect you with poison. You have to use anti-venom kits, or else you're going to die. But yeah, it's a lot of like platforming and just puzzling. And the shitty thing about this one is there's like this auto aim feature that locks on to bad guys sometimes, and it's really poorly done. So any of the gunfighting, which isn't like that huge of the part of the game, it's kind of hit or miss, but I still enjoy it. A lot of fun little platforming puzzles and like trying to find your way around. You go into the last I left it, you were in Nebuchadnezzar's library. And yeah. Oh, there's a reappearance of this girl named Sophia who's in the Fate of the Atlantis game. So I think they tried to connect the games together. I also found it interesting that like with these Indiana Jones games that I played, Tomb Raider obviously ripped off like Indiana Jones. Like Tomb Raider is basically Indiana Jones, right? Lara Croft is the female version of Indiana.
Yeah, they just made it sexier.
Yeah. Smaller boobs, but no. But what I thought was interesting is that it kind of rips off the Indiana Jones movies that Tomb Raider did, but all the games of Indiana Jones after that just completely take from Tomb Raider. You know what I mean? Like the gameplay and style puzzles and stuff like that hadn't been done in Indiana Jones up until after Tomb Raider came out. And they basically just kind of took the exact everything from Tomb Raider, the way the guns work, the way the platforming works, the puzzling and stuff like that, pushing blocks around and hidden switches and levers and stuff like that. That's all Tomb Raider. So I kind of like that they stole from each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a snake eating a snake.
Yeah, exactly. Don't mention snakes though. So I really enjoy the Infernal Machine. I think I'm going to play that one. I might play this other one as well. It's called Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb.
And the Emperor's New Groove, you said?
And the Emperor's New Groove.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of dancing in this one.
Has there been an online petition to make David Spade the next Indiana Jones? Because I think we should start that.
Let's do it. We'll put a question in the survey about.
Perfect. I love it.
Why shouldn't he be the next Indiana Jones?
I want him dressed like Joe Dirt too.
Ooh, that'd be great.
Anyway, continue.
Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb. This one has the best like full-fledged story, good dialogue and stuff like that. It came out for PlayStation 2 in 2003. And Xbox and all that. So it's in that era. So this one is very similar in gameplay where you're just kind of running around and hitting switches and going through temples and stuff. Has a lot tighter controls and movement and stuff like that than the Nintendo 64 version. But it's also like very just like beat 'em up style where there's a lot more guys and just punch your way, kind of like this Charlie's Angels game we played.
I remember that game.
Not bad at all. This one I think was the most well received of any indie game. You know, you use your canteen to fill up your health, and you find water fountains to fill up the canteen again. There's guns and swinging around on your whip over platforms. A lot of platforming, like Uncharted kind of stuff, also stole from this. Obviously, Uncharted is another one that takes after indie.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a scene where the bridge, you're on a shitty bridge and it collapses, and then there's Crocs below, which is like a direct, seemed like nod to the Temple of Doom. What else? Oh, I think there's Nazis in this one again, so it's just kind of just another indie adventure. You're trying to find the heart of Puatu or something. And there's the giant crocodile you have to like trap in a cage, and
Love that.
And then you got to swing on these platforms and hit a bunch of switches and hit all the 3 switches, then you can get the heart. So it's fun. The version I played, you know, I hope people are okay. I'm emulating some of these games, but I don't know where I'd even play them without it. But there was kind of some issues with like the graphics cutting in and out, where like the platforms would just disappear, but they were still there. They were just invisible. And like in the cutscene, which I found like a pretty good cutscene right after this, with like he gets roped into this thing to go to China and find the Emperor's tomb, and the piece that he'd already found in this random temple was apparently connected to the whole tomb, and you need like 4 of these pieces to open the tomb. So it actually sets up the story pretty well, but nobody had torsos in this cutscene, so it was just like floating heads and arms.
Maybe that's part of the story. You know, there's a mythical, supernatural reason they don't have torsos. Yeah.
Oh, maybe I didn't even.
You just haven't gotten there yet.
So yeah, it's more indie adventuring. I feel like there's a lot of the perfect Indiana Jones games. So these are supposedly the best, besides maybe the Lego ones, which I didn't play. But
that's almost its own franchise, the Lego
exactly,
stuff at this
and
point,
it's kind of like, yeah. I don't know if you've ever played them, but I feel like they're pretty simple kiddie type games that don't really, like, they follow the movies so much to a T. They're not really doing anything new, and the gameplay is just kind of boring. It's a lot of just like running around punching and kicking things, and I don't know. I don't love them, but they're well made. They're decently made for what they are.
Yeah, I think that just speaks. Go ahead.
The perfect Indiana Jones game can still be made. It just hasn't been made yet.
Yeah.
These games were pretty good, and they got a lot of it right. The voice acting, the story-wise, and like, I really like the Infernal Machine, the N64 one setup, where you have these levels and you collect. You get like jewels that you can collect, and each one you can go back and replay the level and try to collect more jewels as you like gain new items that get you into other areas. And yeah, I guess Bethesda, who made like Fallout and Skyrim and stuff, they're making an Indiana Jones game supposedly. I don't know where it's at in development, but that could be really awesome. What were you going to say a second ago?
Oh, I just think this was a great franchise for us to pick to start with, because there's so much peripheral stuff around Indiana Jones. Like if we do, I don't know. I was going to say Ghostbusters, but that's not a great example. But, like there's a lot of these other franchises that don't have books and video games and TV shows and all this stuff off to the side. So I think this is a great spot for us to start.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of Ghostbusters video games just on that note, but yeah.
And there's TV shows. Yeah. So
is there?
Yeah. There's at least an animated show. Yeah. There's cartoon.
Yeah. So. Let's see here. The last comment I was going to make, hope this is entertaining for you here. But the last one I played was for the Wii, and it came out in 2009, and I think it was the last like full-fledged non-Lego Indiana Jones original story game.
Okay.
But the Wii has the motion controls, right? So they tried to like shoehorn in necessary motion control stuff, and this is a real stinker of a game. Like it's called Indiana Jones and the Staff of Kings. I didn't make it too far, but oh god, it's just like so clunky. The fighting is terrible. You like have to like to get through vines, you have to like throw your whip and then pull it back, which would be like fun maybe with a nunchuck, but it like the Wii nunchuck or whatever.
Yeah.
But it just does not translate. And I played like the PlayStation 2 version, which is just you just basically run around and hit like square on something, do this here, square on this, hit X here, and then like you're running across a bridge and you press L1, R1 alternating, and you run across the bridge. Just a lot of like quick time. What did I call it here? Sequence gaming, where it's just like, oh, here's a little. It's like a way too elaborate set piece, high concept moment with boring gameplay.
Okay.
So like, it's just like some cutscenes they have in video games where it's just like tap A repeatedly and then tap X or tap circle here at the right time, and it's just a cutscene, but you're tapping a button here and it just makes for really boring and lame gameplay, in my opinion. So there's a lot of that. At one point, you run across a bridge and you're tapping L1, R1, and then the bridge catches on fire and it falls down. I don't know. I didn't get too far, but there's also dogfighting after that where you're in a plane. So they tried to just wedge way too much stuff in. And it's like tons of little sequences that just none of them really work. Yeah. Anyway, I think there's Nazis in this one as well. I don't know. And this came out like 6 years after the Emperor's Tomb game. And it was just trash. Really bad.
Okay.
No flow. Here's what I wrote. No flow. Terrible combat. Press button, do this. Janky fighting, ugly, dumb, and there's no puzzles either. Like, this game doesn't have any of the puzzling effects. It's just like...
That seems like a real missed opportunity.
Ugh.
I would love to see, like, Rockstar do one of these or something. That would be super fun, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Like a Red Dead Redemption thing, but with Indiana Jones.
Yeah. So that's my little video game roundup here. I think I talked about it exhausted that subject quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to get an update next week if you keep playing through those other two. Yeah. Yeah.
I think I'm going to finish that. And then maybe next week we'll talk about other IP from Indiana Jones. We'll talk about the Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which we're going to go see.
Hell yeah. Excited for that.
And then I might talk about other spin-offs or something. We'll decide what we're going to do on that.
And we're also going to talk about your responses to our survey. So take a peek in the show notes and throw some stuff in there for us.
Yes,
we'll get the survey up there soon. Yeah,
we'll read your funny responses, read our favorites, and looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right, Tanner.
Anything else you want to talk about, Chris?
Nothing on my end, buddy.
All righty.
All right.
Well, join us next week for the next
movie.